Welcome to our virtual Vaalimökillä, aka candidate cabin. So normally we would have these booths in the city center, but now since we'll have these online discussions about interesting topics. And today's topic will be sustainable energy. So how will we produce energy and district heating in the future, and what changes must be done to and 4, and whenever you wish to join in the conversation, or you have a question or anything, just feel free to in the discussion or join in. So first, Antonio Caló from the Department of Energy and Environmental Engineering in the University of Oulu. He's an expert in distributed energy systems and nuclear energy. Welcome.
Thank you, Antti. I apologize. I think I missed some of your introduction because there was a bad connection. So I guess I can actually introduce myself very shortly. What is it that I'm doing and my field of expertise. As a background, I am a physicist by training. I'm an atomic and molecular physicist. And then in the last 10 years, I moved my professional life into the environmental engineering business, always at the University of Oulu. I work at the what is nowadays the unit that focuses on water, energy, and environmental engineering. I specialize in distributed energy systems, and also because of my past in nuclear energy, primarily in terms of education, as in Oulu, we do not have yet a critical mass in terms of research dedicated to nuclear energy when it comes to environmental engineering. Although it's a field that I can tell you, like, because of Fennovoima and anything else, it's growing in terms of noise and general interest, also in terms of students' interest. And that's it. I'm here in this capacity, and I was actually mentioning before that I'm here also in dual capacity, in the sense that I'm here just for technical support, if there is a possibility to provide any technical point of view in terms of energy related conversation, and also as a citizen that I would like to know what the conversation is all about, because eventually I need to vote as well. So good to know what is going on. And that's it. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you. Great to have you here. And to continue the round of introductions, the next expert we have here is Kimmo Alatulkkila, Director of Heat Services and Maintenance in Oulun Energia. Would you like to give us a small introduction, who you are and what is your field of expertise?
Yeah, hi all. My name is Kimmo Alatulkkila. I'm Director of Heat Services at the moment, and the cooling business is a rising star in Oulu Energy portfolio. We are starting the cooling business as a service business model, and that's hopefully the future, one of the future business areas for Oulu Energy also. And we are keen on having discussions how we could form Oulu Energy production to the more sustainable world needs. And for example, we have done lots of investments regarding this bio-based fuel power plants. We have done investments for waste recycling, and lots of different investments regarding this environmental topics. And the future is bright in my point of view to Oulu Energy, and district heating is the key solution for the future projects. also these SMRs, for example.
Thank you. And then we have 4 great candidates. Paula Himanen, Linda Omodara, Janne Rajala, and me, Antti. So I would like also the candidates to do a small introduction. What do you care about in Oulu? What is important for you? Paula, would you like to start?
Okay, thank you, Antti. What do I care? So, hello everybody first. So my name is Paula Himanen and I'm a Green member of Oulu City Council. And about my educational background, I have done my master thesis in technology and accounting. And I'm also nowadays the board member in Oulu Energia. But to answer your question, what do I care nowadays? I care making decisions in a position I'm in now. That kind of decisions that we can leave a clear and poor city for the next generations, so that we can really reach the carbon neutrality target, what has been defined, or even earlier. What else I should say? Maybe those are the most important thing. I care for green city. Thank you.
Linda, would you like to continue?
Yeah, sure. Oh, okay. So my name is Linda Omodara, and I'm a first-time candidate at the Oulu City municipal election under the Greens political party. So my background is on, I had master's degree in environmental engineering, and I majored in clean technology. And I'm also currently studying for my PhD degree in sustainability and sustainability assessment of rare earth and critical metals. So what is important to me in this in Oulu is number one, integration of immigrants and locals. And secondly, what is important to me is more comfortable life for families with children. And thirdly, what is important to me is combating climate change and making sure we produce clean energy now and for the future. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Great to have you here. And Janne.
Hello, I'm also first-time candidate. I used to study economics and engineering, but then I have my own business for something like 15 years. And now, just like Antonio, I work for the University of Oulu in CVC. I'm a drone specialist. I work with these type of things. And what's great is that they actually pay me some money. I would do this for free. And for Oulu, what I think is important is that Oulu is a safe place to live. And hopefully Oulu will take care of people also in the future. So I'm planning to grow old here in Oulu. So hopefully in the future, Oulu will take care of me. So now I have to look after it.
Thanks. And I'm Antti Koivusaari. I'm also running for the first time for the city council. And I do a lot of hiking and fishing and camping, so therefore nature and forests are a really important topic for me. I would really like us to see forests as more than a source for paper factories, and more like how we can, how big of an impact really old and forests that do well, let me start again. So I really care for forests, and would like us to treat them well so that they can be bigger, better for our welfare and income. And then I really think that the best way to make life for everybody better is good, high quality education. So that is something I really would like to focus on. And this transition to carbon neutral and climate neutral Oulu, it has to be done fairly and just so that we create more jobs and equality at the same time when we reduce emissions. But now let's go on with the conversation with our experts. So Antonio, you're working on nuclear physics, and I would really like to hear more about the small modular nuclear reactors which you are working on. So this is one of the solutions that people think might help us reduce emissions. But what these small modular nuclear reactors actually are, like, could you tell us more about the whole thing?
Okay, so bureaucratically speaking, when we are talking about SMR, like it was Kimmo mentioned before, SMR stands for small. It used to be originally small and medium-sized nuclear reactor. Then over time, for a number of reasons, it became also small modular reactor. Essentially, we are talking about the same thing. Sometimes it's just different way to translate the abbreviation. So bureaucratically speaking, small modular reactor, SMRs, are nuclear reactors that are expected to be below 300 megawatts of output. That's what we are talking about. So nuclear, just to give you a reference, conventional nuclear power stations like Olkiluoto Kolme, the one that is switching on and getting into operation nowadays, and the one under construction in Hanhikivi, we are talking about over a gigawatt of output. So when we are talking about the SMRs, we are talking about something smaller, but it's still something. It's not smaller to be understood like, okay, can actually be in my backyard. It's still in a kind of like a small industry size plant, approximately. So that's what we are talking about in terms of energy output. Then under the expression SMR, essentially you have a rather broad set of design, because we are talking about the very near future, or at least is expected to be the very near future of nuclear industry. So traditionally, in nuclear industry has been working according to the principles of economy of scale. So it has been developed since essentially during the second half of the last century, as the bigger it is, the cheaper is the energy we produce. So that was the general trend and the general understanding of the economy of scale. Nowadays, essentially since the beginning of the century, we have been moving toward a process where the energy production at any level has become something to be understood reasonably smaller and distributed. And that is a process that, for a number of reasons, involved also the nuclear industry. So we are talking about the essentially adapting a significant amount of existing technology and including, implementing, embedding into it new results, new development, to develop nuclear power stations that are smaller in size and ideally also distributed over the territory. What are the advantages? Essentially, and I'm oversimplifying here, then later on, if necessary, we can actually go deeper. But essentially, there are two issues here. One, it's in terms of flexibility. So there is always this misunderstanding that it's obvious to translate or make an equivalence or replace nuclear energy with renewables or vice versa. Doesn't matter in which direction you take the conversation from. You usually, like, you can actually, if you talk about just budget of kilowatt, budget of energy, that sometimes seems to be the conversation, but the role that these two technologies have in our energy systems are significantly different. And I'm not saying that they cannot replace each other. I'm just saying that it's very tricky and it's very complicated to actually make the translation. And the reason is nuclear energy, for example, like to work with big output and on a stable way. So you switch on a nuclear power station and you make it run essentially for 1 year till when you switch it off because you have to refuel, do maintenance, and then you switch it on again. So usually with nuclear energy, especially in Finland, you take care of what is called the base load, the amount of energy consumption, the energy need that is always there. We are not talking about satisfying peaks. So you're talking about that kind of role that usually nuclear energy has, historically and also practically in Finland nowadays. This comes with the disadvantage that nuclear energy tends to be not flexible. You cannot adjust the output depending on the demand. That is a big requirement and is a big chunk of what is the decarbonization strategy. So how you respond to peak of consumption is a big part of the all carbon neutrality conversation. There are historically and practically, technologically, some serious limitation with nuclear energy. Going smaller, having smaller nuclear reactors, so replacing over time large nuclear reactors with the smaller ones distributed, it gives you technically the possibility, it's a little bit easier to actually have adjustable output. So at least in terms of design and expectations, that is one big advantage. The second element is in terms of safety, because size does matter when it comes to nuclear. So when you have a smaller nuclear reactor, there are a lot of technical and technological issues that allows you to have extra safety into the system. Last, as a bonus, a third element there, and again, I'm reporting what is in design phase, what is the discussion in the nuclear industry nowadays, but we are talking about design phase. We are talking about the cheaper production, cheaper in terms of implementation, development, installation, smaller cost. Because the idea is that once you have smaller nuclear reactors, you can produce, you can manufacture them, you don't build them. So nowadays, nuclear power stations tend to be, all of them kind of like one of a kind. You actually build the nuclear power station. You don't have this serious production. The expectation with these SMRs that you can actually design them, produce them in series, and then install them where you need them. So when you have this serious production, it should cut costs a lot. Then when it comes to the application of SMRs, they are expected to play a role in different sectors. Nowadays, there are some nuclear power stations that produce also heat, but there are kind of like exceptions in the global, on the global stage. Usually nuclear power stations produce electricity. Going smaller, going distributed allows you to some extent to consider the possibility to implement nuclear technology in different energy sectors. So have nuclear power stations and nuclear reactors, for example, directly, at least that is the intention, directly plugged into the district heating system, for example, and supplement, contribute to the heat production for district heating. And that provides a massive game change, theoretically. Because just to give you an idea, when we are talking about the nuclear reactor, you can think of it in terms of an engine. So usually when you have an engine, like your car engine, roughly speaking, 1/3 of the energy is what you actually use for practical purposes. 2/3 of it becomes waste heat. So the same goes with nuclear reactors. Usually you have 1/3 of the energy produced by the nuclear reaction that becomes electricity. 2/3 becomes waste heat. If you can actually design a nuclear reactor smaller, but for example, engineer to contribute for district heating, or to have, for example, this dual role, according to the need, you can produce electricity, produce heat, or both be co-generator, then you can actually reach level of efficiency that are much, much higher. So, and that brings extra benefits in terms of economics, environmental contribution, reducing emissions, and so forth. So that is the general idea. But yes, we are talking about nuclear reactors that are just smaller in scale. That is the starting point.
Talking about nuclear power plants, many of our viewers and possibly also candidates are probably worried about nuclear waste. So what kind of plans do you have for that locally?
Okay, so nuclear waste, again, we are talking about a nuclear reactor that are in design phase. And just to give you an idea, there are, to some estimations, according to IAEA, at least 50 designs out there in terms of SMRs. So I give you some general guidelines because it's very difficult to actually pinpoint any specific technology and to have forecasts in terms of waste production. The whole idea here is that if we are talking about the nuclear waste, we compare it to the current situation with nuclear power station, usually you do not have local solution for nuclear waste. Actually, Finland is in the forefront when it comes to nuclear waste because there is the whole Caló project. So a nuclear waste facility under construction that should actually become operational, I guess, by the end of the decade, where all the nuclear waste produced in Finland is going to be stored there. So that is the general idea. You do not have local solution for nuclear waste. The change you might have with nuclear waste, if you are talking about SMRs, the whole idea is that you are supposed to produce less waste per energy produced, in the sense that being more efficient. So if I actually compare it, the amount of waste I produce given the same amount of energy output, then I produce smaller amount of waste. That doesn't mean that it's less waste in absolute terms. I'm just saying that it's less waste per output, energy output. So that is considered something beneficial, a big positive aspect. The second element is that yes, we expect, according to different design, to have less waste sometimes, quantitatively. But for example, German researchers recently pointed out that according to many designs, you might end up having different kind of nuclear waste that currently are, okay, I use the word marginal, but with extra care. What does it mean? Nuclear waste, usually you have three kinds of waste. People tend to react with this heavy nuclear waste, highly radioactive, you know, like spent fuel. That is, roughly speaking, probably few percentage point of the total waste produced, but represents 90% of the radioactivity contained in the waste. Then you have medium level waste and small level waste that are less radioactive, but quantitatively are bigger in terms of quantity. But they don't constitute a big problem because all considering you do not have a huge amount of it. German researchers recently pointed out that moving from a centralized energy production in terms of nuclear production to a decentralized, smaller nuclear reactors and so forth, you might significantly increase the amount of different kind of waste, medium and small level waste. Those you might actually be able to take care of it locally because it's not extremely complicated. But then it becomes, that is where the conversation about sustainability steps in, because there are some social issues, some acceptability, some safety issues, some security issues, environmental impacts. So the conversation change entirely if it's acceptable or not. So that is the challenge. But again, we are talking about design phase. It's a little bit tricky.
Yeah, thank you for this very thorough explanation. So now let's do a round with our candidates. I think our viewers would like to hear your opinions on nuclear energy. So what kind of possibilities do you see in Oulu? And would you like have it as a part of the energy plan here in Oulu?
Okay, let me go first. So yes, of course, I would like to see it as a part of Oulu because according to what Dr. Antonio said, small modular reactors are really energy efficient compared to the bigger, the much bigger traditional nuclear power plants. So, and as we know, we have renewable source of energy in Oulu from wind, solar, but it's not so much. And most of the renewable energy source comes from biofuels. And on the long run, it's not so sustainable. So I believe for a more sustainable and for us to achieve our carbon neutral target in 2030, we have to adopt this small modular reactor in Oulu. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Thanks. Janne, Paula.
Well, I'm a bit skeptical about the price of electricity that these medium-sized reactors are going to make, because even the large ones, in today's standards, it seems unlikely that they are going to make electricity in a cheap way. So, Antonio, do you think that the price of electricity is going to be less than in bigger facilities?
I answer now, or we go around the table. If you want, I answer.
Either way. Go ahead.
Go ahead. When it comes to price, is not clear at all. Again, because it's very different, the price of electricity that you might have, depending, for example, if you have a nuclear reactor that is also plugged into the district heating system. So its financial performance, its economic performance is also related to the other energy vectors. So how much the electricity price might be in relation to that nuclear reactor is really not clear. Also in Finland, where there is an active unit in VTT, for example, working on the development of a Finnish designed SMR, they say like the biggest challenge is the technical inclusion, the technical connection of these, even designing the technical connection of this SMR into the district heating system. So it's really not clear in terms of price and economic performance what might actually be. I don't know if you want to go there. I just urge you all to remember that Finland also, when it comes to electricity price from nuclear, is a bit different case compared to other countries, because we have this Mankala process, Mankala principle. So I'm not sure if you are familiar with it, that complicates nicely in terms of things, in terms of electricity price. So just to let you know, so I don't want to steal time for the others. So just let you know that in Finland, the game is a little bit different. but it's a good point. It's a big question mark because it's not obvious that electricity is going to be cheap. I'm not saying that it's going to be more expensive, but we don't have any reason to say automatically it's going to be cheaper. That one is to be seen.
And I feel that the even bigger problem is going to be what the people think about nuclear power. So as soon as somebody says out loud that there's going to be nuclear power plant in Toppila, for example, it's going to be like, ho, 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 what's going on? So it's going to be a long way to make sure that this is the safe way to produce energy and to educate people. So this is something like, I know that these small reactors, they have been designed since something like 60s, but is the army using this at the moment, or are these in Russia or someplace working at the moment?
There are some designs that have been implemented, and when it comes to nuclear, sometimes usually the army is the first one that steps in for a number of reasons. But usually the army has a tradition in what are called micro reactors. That's why also the army quite often is involved, because you have nuclear submarines, you have icebreakers and so forth, but those are micro reactors, and it's even different game there, even smaller. So in that sense, SMRs, they find themselves in between micro reactors and a small nuclear power plant. So quite often you have this testing that is done in a semi-military environment. Just to point out though that Janne actually made it clear a very good point. One of the reasons why we do not have yet nuclear power station plugged into the district heating systems nowadays, it's because one of the reasons is because nuclear power station, of course, cannot be placed very close to large urban centers. So usually they are located rather far, and transporting the electricity without big losses is not a huge deal for certain kind of distances. But if you had to transport heat for 100 kilometers, that is complicated. So, and it's not obvious that you can actually place, even though it's a smaller reactor, closer to a urban center. So that is also another challenge. And Janne was very good in pointing that one out. That is a major challenge. So how you plug it in into the system, where you place it, because for sure it's not something that you can place in Toppila. So, but then it goes back to the social sustainability, acceptability, and so forth. So that is a huge issue.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
I can also say something here. Basically, there are still the same questions to be asked as with the high-scale nuclear power plants: the safety, the final disposal of the heat parts or the nuclear waste, and then all those risks included, even if the scale is smaller. Therefore, I'm still a little bit skeptic for these plans, but I would say that we would need more information about this and how in pilot tests one would have solved these problems. I have heard that in Japan, in some years ago already, there was one pilot plant, but I'm not sure if that is the correct information. As Antonio mentioned, this transfer of heat, it's not efficient, but in a longer term transfer of electricity maybe can be solved in a better way and more efficient way with batteries, whether the batteries are electricity batteries or hydrogen batteries. So there is, I think there are many reasons to go on with this kind of research still, because we would need stable power, stable generated power, and this modularity of these small scale plants. That sounds very interesting. And no, maybe that's what I wanted to say here. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm also open for nuclear energy as a part of our energy plan. I must say that the recent nuclear power plant projects in Finland have been quite slow, and the timetable has become even longer than it was. So in cutting down our emissions towards 2030, we maybe cannot rely on something that is still being researched. To meet our goals there, we need solutions that already exist, like wind power, to make Oulu climate neutral by 2030. But with growing population and new, bigger demand for energy, we most likely need new sources of energy in the future as well. And as long as the concerns Paula also mentioned are taken care of, I am open to nuclear energy as a part of our energy plan. But you already mentioned district heating, which is one of the biggest sources of greenhouse gases in cities usually, and here in the north especially. So let's move on to district heating and to our second expert, Kimmo Alatulkkila from Oulun Energia. So Oulun Energia has offered carbon neutral district heating. What does this mean? And could you open up, like, how does carbon neutral district heating work?
Okay, that's a totally new product that we have launched in the end of March this year. Actually, it's produced from bio-based power fuels in our power plants, and also we have some industrial surplus utilization in Oulu, for example, this forest industry Stora Enso, which provides some of our heat in Oulu network. But also there's lots of discussions and also ongoing projects within this heat pump integrations into the district heating network. And for example, grocery stores and those kind of sources where they need this cold cooling as a service, they also provide excess heat from those locations, and we can utilize that to heat up citizens' houses, and that's the way of producing carbon neutral heating in Oulu. And we have lots of discussions, for example, these data centers with Business Oulu, how to get those investors to be interested to invest in Oulu. And that's one of the key points in my point of view for the future, how Oulu would profile itself as a green ICT capital of the world. And that's a challenge that I would like to point out. We can and we will, if there's a political will to do that. And also additional to that, there's lots of other perspectives. For example, the hydrogen future, which needs lots of energy as an electricity form, but it also needs those pure CO2 based power plants to utilize this storage capabilities that we have in Oulu, based on the wood-based industry that we have, for example, in Laanila and in this port area that we have.
So how does the eco power plant in Laanila what is the actual way of producing district heating there?
The eco power plant is it's a small one. It's only about 50 megawatts of power, but it's handling the northern Finland waste from the housing. So it's a solution for the waste problem. And additional to that we have those eco power plants, and nowadays within 2020 we started this. We commissioned this bio-based and also SRF capable power plant in Laanila, within next to the bio power plant. Those are the two main power plants that we have now, and the bio power plant is the source of carbon neutral district heating, but only one of those sources. The eco power plant, it's not CO2 neutral burning, but it's a solution for the waste problem. So to clarify this, there's two power plants within the same area in Laanila. Bio power plant and also the eco power plant.
Thank you. And now let's again take a round with our candidates. So what would be your top 3 changes for a greener Oulu in energy and district heating? Or let's make it broader, like overall, what would be your top 3 ways of making Oulu greener?
Was it a question to me?
To the candidates.
Okay.
Well, the wind power is one thing that we should take a look at, just like our neighbors like they are making big money from wind energy, and we should make a study to see which places should be suitable for wind energy, and especially the offshore wind farms. There used to be problems with the ice, but today they have some sort of solution to help with the ice problem, because moving ice is a big problem, because they can hit the windmill and they will crash. But now I've heard that there's some sort of solution. So at least Oulu should make a study about this.
Okay, so let me go next. So for me, my picks on renewable energy in Oulu is number 1, wind energy. Number 2, more solar energy by solar panels, and then also geothermal heating. And then I'm also thinking of these small modular nuclear reactors. I think they are really important because in order for us to achieve our carbon neutrality by 2030, we have to reduce the burden of producing energy from producing bioenergy, which is gotten from wood and wood residues. So I think we have the total reliance of Finland on fossil fuels is still about 35%. So and for us to achieve our targets, we need to create more of these renewable sources, and also think towards nuclear reactors as well, nuclear power plants, through these small modular reactors. That's my thoughts on this.
I can then continue. District heating is as I said, one of the biggest sources of emissions. So that is one thing I would like to focus on. Kimmo there mentioned great ways to reduce the emissions, just like geothermal heat, and also circulating the waste heat or the excess heat better, which is ways of heat that already exist that we can just use. And also in there, getting rid of peat burning and doing it fairly, so that, for example, the companies that now gather peat could restore the peat swamps in their original condition. But then to the other way, I would really like to see local train here in Oulu. It would make easier for people to travel in the cities nearby and villages, and also easier for companies to get employees to Oulu, and also reduce the amount of emissions from transportation. And thirdly, I would really like to see more wind energy, more windmills, and also offshore wind energy, as Janne pointed out. And then we have still Paula.
Thank you. In my scenario, actually, I have done one scenario where I have drafted an alternative optional path to reach carbon neutrality for Oulu Energia earlier than this 2035. And in that kind of scenario, I have the target has been reached by using less peat, but also using less wood. And how to get there? There are, in my scenario, I have been replacing these peat and wood, not totally the wood, but one part of wood, by moving especially to high-scale wind power, as the earlier speakers have also this represented. Then I have this biogas still included as a raw material to be burned in incinerators. And then maybe we could also increase the amount of waste to be burned, even if it's not sustainable. And the fourth way is to increase geothermal electricity. This waste burning is not sustainable in a long period, but it could be considered as an option or for an interim period during which more sustainable and more advanced technologies, such as this geothermal electricity, hydrogen, and small-scale nuclear power could be developed. So I see there are several stages in my carbon neutral path. And also regarding the bigger circumstances, if we are speaking about Oulu City has now this carbon neutrality target for 2040. And I have to say it's not very ambitious. Tampere and Espoo, they have already for 2035, Lahti and Turku before that. So I think for Oulu City, we would need more ambitious target. And this is because, for instance, real estate companies, they are seeking now options to invest in green real estates. And green estate can mean heating with carbon neutral raw material, or buildings built with wood. And here I see also this traffic, sustainable traffic, like these commuter train services in Oulu district. That could be one solution in certain period to decrease carbon dioxide emissions. But this is my vision. Thank you.
Thank you. It seems Kimmo has raised his hand. Do you have something you would like to say?
Yeah, a few words about those facts that was represented just recently. Actually, district heating as itself doesn't produce any pollution. It's only way of transferring energy to from power plants to customers. And if we can make this production carbon neutral, the district heating system offers us the fastest way of greening the whole city within the energy sector. And what comes to the different energy sources, I'm totally have the same opinion like Paula said, that the biogas is one of the solutions, but also the hydrogen will be in the near future rapidly developing technology, and probably in the near future, because we have lots of bio-based production in Oulu, and there's residual bio-based materials for processing as a bio-based power plants in bio-based power plants, and that with that CO2 emissions we could implement synthetic fuel storaging for this to reduce this fluctuation in power consumption. We need some heat storages, and if these heat storages are based on synthetic fuels, that could be one solution for all, because we have this bio-based wood processing industry in Oulu, quite big scale. And one of those topics for the residual heat utilization from the different type of shops and from the cooling stations, it can produce one unit can produce about 4 gigawatt hours pure district heating, and in total in Oulu we have 1.6 terawatt hour energy consumption in the district heating network. So if you scale this 4 gigawatt hour up to 200 stores, for example, you have solutions that could be one of the key elements for Oulu and for the Finland also. That's one concept that we have developed with Caverion and Arina, for example, in this Oulu area. We have done some pilots within, and at the moment we are commissioning first 2 shops with this technique, and that's a way of handling the land use, how to build those units located to housing, and that's the key element also in this discussion within the climate neutral future of Oulu.
Thank you. Very interesting new take on this. I have an interesting topic which at least raises discussion among people for our candidates. The water energy plant in Merikoski. It produces about 40 megawatts of energy when, for example, Laanila produced over 200 megawatts and Toppila over 300 megawatts. And the water energy plant is a major issue for salmon and trout in the river. So what is your opinion and take on water energy, and especially water energy in Oulujoki, and what kind of role do you see for it in Oulu?
Well, at the moment, when the plant is there, and so there's no reason to rip it off, but I'm sure that in the future there's going to be a time that those power plants at the river will be removed when there's enough wind energy offshore. We may feel that it's better to have the windmills offshore and rivers running free. and hopefully in our lifetime that day could happen.
Okay, so let me go next. So I also think that for now we don't have much of a choice. It has to run until its lifespan is reached, and then we move on to more sustainable energy producing forms. Yeah, because we also have to think of the marine life as well, because they are part of our ecosystem. It's really important.
Paula, what do you think?
Well, I agree with Linda, because at the moment, this is not the best moment to tear Merikoski Dam down, but we could of course do something like building a natural small river besides it, so that the fishes have real natural way to go to the upper river, so that this, how do you call these fish steps made of beton, they are not best possible. So this could be my solution, and the dam also have some beauty values. It's protected by UNESCO, and of course the amount of energy what it is producing is not so big, but it's so-called adjustable energy. So it has its value at the moment until we will find better solutions like hydrogen technology and those things.
Thanks. Yeah, just like wind and solar energy, for example, they have peaks and lows, and good way to even out that. And I don't know if just making the natural riverway for there are not many places where they can mate, spawn, what is it called with fish? I don't know. But one interesting solution would be to build a new spawning place like under the plant, where we have this huge lake, pond kind of place next to Ainolanpuisto. That is a place where fish could mate so that they don't even have to get above the power plant in Tuira. And that is one way to give fish better place to spawn, and then have that dam there. Because also, I'm not sure what happens to Toivoniemi without the dam, now that we must keep the water at a certain level. Kimmo has again raised his hand, so would you like to add something? It seems you have mute on.
Okay, I have double mute in my system. So, a few facts about the power production in Oulu. It's true that the electricity power is about 40 megawatts in Merikoski, and it's true that the total power of OIBO, for example, is 215 megawatts, but that's the total power. And if you compare only the electricity power, OIBO has about 75 megawatts of electricity power compared to the Merikoski 40 megawatts. So when you compare the CHP combined heat and power plant, then you are producing 2/3 as a district heating energy, and that's the most efficient way of producing heat and electricity together. why it's important that we have those resources at the moment, so that in the near future, Merikoski ripping up, it's not an option. It has to be replaced somehow, this electricity production. For example, wind sails and different type of wind parks could be.
If I may, I think I lost Kim as well. If I may, I just wanted to give you just a couple of technical comments. I start with the latest one, the role of hydropower. Regardless of the numbers, because then it depends also future development and so forth. So I'm not speaking specifically about Oulu situation here, but in general, it's not obvious that installing extra wind power, for example, might necessarily allow getting rid of hydropower. And the reason is that, yes, usually we are talking about balancing the energy needs in terms of really supply. So when we do not have enough energy of one kind, then we switch on one other kind. So this quantitative balance is one aspect of it. But quite often, and hydropower plays a big role in it, there is a kind of like qualitative elements into it. So this balance between energy and demand, technically, I don't want to go in the technicalities, but this balance between supply and demand has to be maintained constantly. So usually, and it happens quite often, that communities that develop a significant amount of renewable energies that tend to be irregular in their output, like wind power sometimes, they require, for example, hydropower, it's very suitable for it, balancing power that can actually switch on and switch off very rapidly. And hydropower tend to answer in terms of seconds. You can switch on or switch off or increase or decrease the output in terms of seconds, balancing very nicely, working together very nicely with the irregular energy supply like wind or solar. So this is one of the challenges of increasing renewables. So you do increase very low emission energy supply, but you increase the regularity, and that has to be compensated generally with something that is very flexible and possibly clean. So I'm not saying that this is the case of Oulu, but don't translate at least automatically the conversation, I increase one so I can get rid of the other one, because it might not be the case. And the second one, and good that Paula is raising the hand, because my comment was for something you said before. You made a comparison with Tampere, for example, and other cities, and that they are going for carbon neutrality by 2040. No, a bit earlier, and Oulu is 2040, and other cities a bit earlier. And it's not necessarily true, and I'm not saying this is the case. It's not necessarily true that it's not as ambitious as Tampere, for example. And one of the reasons is because a big role is, for example, the logistics, and population density, for example, plays a big role. Tampere tend to be much more urban. You have areas with higher population density, and then district heating and transportation tend to be much more effective once you can actually supply services with the same resources to a higher population. In Oulu, we are very, very spread. Oulu municipality, I think, has the same extension of London, just to give you an idea. But so that means that transportation, district heating is a big challenge. So you do have to invest a lot in terms of energy resources to be able to supply the same amount of service to a population that is so very spread. So that is a big challenge, and it's not obvious that you can actually implement the same solution in different places and expect the same output. Again, it's a warning. So put that one in the budget when you make the calculation. It's a more technical aspect. And that's it. I shut up.
Paula asked for a turn to speak.
Yes, I would like to comment. Antonio is quite right that we are totally different cities if you compare Tampere and Oulu, but the number of inhabitants is the same, and I have to say that Tampere is our benchmarking city, so that's why I have raised it. It's a really benchmarking city. Yes, you are right in those respects, but business is hard, and I'm just worried about should Oulu have enough attraction power to have here so-called green investors when we're speaking about real estates and their ability to have new carbon neutral heating and those so kind of green labels. That was my worry when I raised this. But another idea I want to raise is that when you were speaking about the balance between different kind of energy forms and regarding this high scale wind power, I have heard that one solution for that is that, for instance, Oulu or other Finnish cities would need high-scale industry, which are consuming electricity then when windmills are producing at the cheapest price. And that would solve some of these big issues so that the balance could be found without storing power. That's my comment.
Thank you. It seems we have now discussed for an hour, and this was the time we had for this discussion. Thank you for both of our experts for being here with us. Thanks to all the candidates for attending the conversation. So see you again in the next time. I think it's on the 3rd. Check it out on the same Facebook page, this Vihreät Oulussa, and join in for more interesting conversations on local politics.
Thank you. Bye-bye, all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Again for the invitation.
Thank you.
Very much.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Thanks. See ya.
Yeah.